Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. I'm Suzy Vance, and I'm here with Taki Floutsis.
Yep.
Look at that. I
Bingo,
did it.
first try. That's impressive. Most people can't do it on their first try.
We're learning here today, and we're going to learn about MySchoolOptions with Taki. Taki was homeschooled, and lo and behold, he has decided that he is interested in making sure all the right options are available for every student.
Yeah.
So Taki, how did you get into this?
Oh man. So yeah, I was homeschooled, and I was homeschooled K through 12, and so it was a passion of mine was working in politics and I was kind of a nerd growing up, and so that was my passion project. I loved working on that. I ended up getting involved in my church and being very active there, and graduated high school and from homeschooling, that was a feat.
Yes.
I got to give props to my mom. She did such a great job balancing. We were a single income household, and before I always tell people, I'm like, we lived through 2008 just like everybody else. And being a single income household on a homeschooling means my mom's home, and my dad has to provide for my family, and so I was homeschooled. My brother was homeschooled, and my sister is still being homeschooled. She's a lot younger than we are. And so, but one of my favorite things about being homeschooled was we got to pursue our passions. And so, I was probably in like 5th or 6th grade. I don't even know, probably earlier than that, watching videos on the Constitution, and, political advocacy. And so after graduating and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, really a father figure in my life was like, you need to go back to school and pursue this. And so got involved, worked on a campaign, and then after the campaign, I got this phone call from MySchoolOptions, and we're like, "Hey, have you ever heard of school choice?" I was like, "No." I'm like, I was homeschooled. That was it, and I was like, "Well, we'll try it out." But one of the things that I loved about the job so much, and what made me stay, was.
And how long has it been?
I've only been here about a year and a half. But what made me stay was I got to connect with people. And I got to connect with people who had similar stories to me. One of the biggest struggles for my family was when high school came around. There's no more Pop Warner leagues for sports, and there's no really, theater programs for homeschoolers, or there really wasn't they weren't as readily available when I was in high school. And so we had tossed around the idea of as a family of going to a private school. And they were like, it's just not in the cards. We couldn't afford it. So a lot of the work that we do at MySchoolOptions helps advocate for the expansion of these. And so now I was actually able to have my conversation with my sister, who's 11 years younger than me. She's about to come up into high school, and she was like, "Oh, I want to go to a private, or I want to go to high school." And I was like, "You get to go wherever you want." And so it was special because I didn't have that option growing up, and so getting to share that helps me be very passionate because the work that we do benefits families and friends that I know, and so I guess that's kind of a big walk around.
Can you give me an example of a family that you've helped in some way or other?
Yeah, so actually a friend of our family, my wife and I, she has a daughter who is in pre-K, and they wanted to homeschool her, and they tried preliminary homeschooling and tried some things out, and they just realized, they were like, she wants to go to school. Like, she wants to learn in that environment, and that's what's best for her. And that same year, I had just started with MySchoolOptions, and we helped pass the most recent voucher expansion that allowed families just K through 12, no hoops to jump through. You used to have to pay for the first year of private school before you could access it. We helped pass legislation that opened that door. And so it was super cool to be able to be like, no, like your daughter can go to the school that she wants to, and I got to be directly involved in that, and so that was great. I've had families, I've had families break down in tears in front of my booth before. We'll do booths at community events, and I'm like, hey, you could qualify for this voucher program, and they start crying, because education, is so important, or just where they are, their children aren't able to access the education that they need. So
That's fascinating.
yeah, it's humbling, I will say.
So you were homeschooled, and then where did you go to do anything beyond homeschooling before you started this? Or?
Yeah, so I attended Purdue University Northwest because it was close to home and cheaper. And so I had started late. So I'm actually still in the process of getting my degree because I started a family and all that before I finished school. Busy man, yes, yes. We're almost there, but I attended Purdue Northwest for almost 3 years, and then I've just recently transferred to Liberty University online. So that's what.
And you're close.
Close, very close. Next year I'll be done. So
I'll
be a super senior. 'Cause, we didn't put life on hold for school. So
that's very fascinating.
Yeah.
And when you went into this, it was because School Options called you, but they called you because they saw you doing something.
Yeah, like I said, I worked on a campaign, and I was able to kind of I wouldn't say make a name for myself, but I did very well as one of the interns for the campaign, and left an impression on somebody.
There you go.
And so that was a fun lesson. Cool.
Was that a goal?
It was not. It was not necessary. I mean, I knew that this was kind of an open door into the world that I wanted to one day work in.
In a way you could maybe influence
people. Yeah, and so, but the person I made an impression on was completely by accident. He just happened to be there, and I
listened to you talk.
Set up a room for him, and guess I did a good job. And next thing I know, I've got my now boss calling me on the phone, like, "Hey, we want to set up an interview." So. So that made me feel good.
And all of this is because of your own personal experiences.
I guess you could say, that I gotta give, credit where credit's due, man. I felt, from a very young age, I felt like the Lord called me into this field, and so I was like, let's go for it, and good father figures to kick me in the butt when I needed it and tell me, go back to school, you need to. So, okay, so little decisions that all kind of dominoed into this.
And you're not done.
No, not done. Not done.
How old are you?
I'll be 25 this summer.
Great.
Yeah.
Your life is just beginning.
That's what everyone says. So I hope
Think of how many more things you could do.
It's a little overwhelming when I think about it, but it's exciting too.
What have you learned in pursuing the group that called you up and said, please come work for us? Is there any lesson in that for you? I don't mean hard lesson.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the message? What do you take away from that?
Yeah, well, I think, especially to put our business hat on, one of the things that has been really eye-opening is just how many options we have in Indiana. That was, as a child who grew up homeschooled and felt like there was no support. There was no shot. It was you were on your own because you chose to do things differently.
And yet you got into Purdue.
It felt really encouraging to find out. We have in Indiana, we're one of the largest school choice states in the nation. We have some of the most robust programs in the nation. 97% of Hoosiers qualify for the voucher, up to $6,500 or more, and that was super eye-opening and encouraging. Being able to one of the newer programs, the ESA program, the Education Scholarship Account. this is really the first opportunity in the state of Indiana to allow homeschoolers access to their state dollars. Because we paid into taxes for years, but there was no program available. Mm-hmm. And so with this program, being able to help advocate and see the expansions, it's exciting, and it helped, show me where we are and how close we are, mm-hmm. To really having equitable education funding for all school choice in the state of Indiana. So that was eye-opening and encouraging for me.
So I have this question that people always seem to glom onto when we're talking about homeschooling.
Yeah.
There's you, and then there's you, and then there's you. How did you connect with other people your age?
Yeah, I got to give a lot of credit again to my parents. They pushed us very, very hard because we were homeschooled to stay engaged with our community. So we did sports programs growing up. And then when we got into the high school ages, I was very involved with the youth ministry at my church. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it forced me to connect. Mm-hmm. I'm a talker. I'm a social guy. So you just put me in a room and I'll go meet everybody. And so, but I can give them credit by helping put us in those circumstances to be able to meet, families. And so.
And that's made a difference in your life?
Absolutely. 100%. I think, being able to have connections and make connections with people has opened almost every door in my life, and the willingness to just put myself out there.
So what advice would you have for someone who is feeling stuck in one way or another, or has lost their job, or doesn't like their job? Or...
Yeah. Well, one, again, I'm a Christian, so I believe, God puts us all here for a purpose. Mm-hmm.
And we all should contribute.
Yeah, and I think that when you find that purpose, as hard as it is and as annoying as it might be, sometimes, that's what I fall back on. When I'm having a bad day, or I'm struggling, or I'm like, man, is this going to work out? I come back and I'm like, well, I'm here for this purpose, and it gives that drive. And so I would encourage, I guess, if somebody's having a hard time, like you don't know what to do, is, have you found your purpose? What are you here for? What do you enjoy doing?
That's the question for me. What makes you a happy person? What grabs your attention? What makes you happy?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing that, you can put up with a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. And I think that the interesting thing for me is it's always been, I feel like there's a difference between that happiness of like I would love to go to the beach every day,
Right.
And the happiness of doing what you're supposed to do, if that makes sense.
Contributing.
Yeah. And I think, again, going for me back to that purpose, because I'm not always happy when I'm up till midnight, doing a paper, but when I finish that paper, I'm much happier than when, and like you said, I'm living for a purpose. Mm-hmm. I'm living for something, so that when I look back on my life and it's like all of those hard things, it wasn't just hard for no reason. It was hard for something. I put time out there for somebody. I put effort into it for someone other than myself.
Right.
And so that's what I would encourage. And I think what encouraged me so much was that, it doesn't have to be bigger. It doesn't have to be small. Some of the craziest things I've ever done, or most impactful things, were some of the most simple things, of just like encouraging someone when they had a bad day,
Right.
Or being like, hey, you're working at a deadbeat job you don't like, go do something else.
Stick your foot in the water. Oh. Stick your toe in the water and see how it is.
Yeah, so.
That's really great. It's amazing how just rubbing up against another person can make all the difference in the world.
It is true. And I think, that's really what we try to do, at our organization is just be that community resource, let families know, hey, we're here, find your circle, find where your child thrives,
Right.
Especially when it comes to education. I'm more of a proponent of school choice now than I was even when I was homeschooled. And it's because I've seen families who have such a wide variety. I was homeschooled, my wife went to a public school, she did amazing, and so I think sometimes you can start talking to people about school choice and it's like there's negativity, and it's like, no, we're positive. We just want good education for everybody.
Right.
And so
so how does somebody find you or find your organization?
So MySchoolOptions.org. And on there you've got a resource finder, shows you all the schools in your area that are either public, that you can transfer to, charters, which are a form of public school,
Right.
so they're free. It shows you your private schools that are accredited to the state, so you can receive the voucher. It also shows you private schools that choose not to be, if other forms like that. We're working on creating a micro school finder, which is really exciting. Micro schools they're this newer concept that has come up. I'd say they've been around for a while, but they've become the new hip thing within the last few years since COVID, and they're somewhere in between homeschooling and private schooling. It's usually multiple. It's like a couple days a week, so you're not there all the time. And what you're doing is you're sending your kids there. They learn something, a trade, a craft, something specific. Sometimes it's all the subjects. There's really no bound to what a micro school can be. And then you're taking the child home, and then you're finishing their education either one-on-one or in other environments, or it's a full service schooling, but it's in a smaller environment, maybe 10 kids. So you get that, intimate one room classroom feel. So I would say that's probably the most expansive form of choice that we've seen over the last few years. It's really, really blown up since COVID. I think it helped. I think when COVID happened, and everything that came with it, there was a desire to revamp education. I think there were some things that a lot of folks saw that was like, ooh, we don't like the way that we do that anymore. And then there was a lot of folks who were like, well, we can kind of do this differently now. And so micro schools are probably the newest form. And then the ESA program created by the Treasurer's Office, which we have information on our website or on the Treasurer's website. That program currently serves any student who has a IEP or an SP, so special needs. And what it does, if they decide, okay, public schooling or the traditional forms of school, it's not servicing my child, what do I do? This program allows them to access their state dollars for their child, which is like $6,500 on average, and any of their state APC or special needs dollars, so like up to $10,000 or $12,000.
Wow.
That gets deposited into the parent's account. And so if you have a child who's got a severe special need and has that highest grade level of IEP, a parent could be looking at somewhere between $17,000 to $19,000 a year deposited into their own personal account that they can then use to help pay for vendors, services, curriculum, even private school. And so, again, I think that's probably the program that I'm the most excited about.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think this is the first time we, as I say we, coming from a homeschooled community, have an opportunity to access some of the educational funds that are in Indiana. We redo our budget every 2 years, and we put $9 billion into education. It's half of our state budget goes to education every year. And so being able to let that money work for the people,
It's really,
I think is really important. So.
yeah. Well, this is great. Can they reach you and reach out to you? And
Yeah.
If so, how would they do that?
Yeah, so like I guess I could, myschooloptions.org, we have a contact us section. So I'm the regional director for Northwest Indiana all the way through, basically if you took Highway 41 and went south, so Lafayette and then Evansville. And then I have a coworker who covers the Fort Wayne South Bend, and then we're based out of Indianapolis. So if you go to our website, there's a contact us section. You know, for regional purposes, I could give you my email. We could post.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I could leave my email so that way,
Okay.
you know, families, if they have any questions, I get phone calls or emails all the time with
Okay.
people who have questions of what to do.
Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing.
Absolutely, my
This
pleasure.
has been great.
I appreciate it.
Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. I'm Suzy Vance. We'll see you next time.